It's 6:03. We'll go ahead and start the meeting. Let's please take roll.
Commissioner Lade, Commissioner Diaz,
Here.
Commissioner Bray,
Here.
Commissioner Wagner,
Present.
Commissioner Carner,
Present.
Chair Vang.
Here. Thank you. Next, we'll now begin the pledge of, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. Ready? Begin. We'll go ahead and read the procedures for the meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and electronically. The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all virtual participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment on the item, use the raise hand function on Zoom. To avoid any confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand. For each matter considered by the commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by a testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The 3 lights on the podium next to the microphone will indicate the amount of time remaining for the speaker. The green light will be turned on when the speaker begins. The yellow light will come on with the soft bell ring when 1 minute is remaining. The speaker should be completing the testimony by the time the red light comes on with the final bell indicating time has expired. All in-person public testimony must be presented to the commission at the podium. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. Next, we'll start today's meeting with the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Good evening, Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Israel Trejo with the Planning and Development Department. We do not have any changes to the agenda. Chair Vang would like for you to make an announcement. We do, similar to the last meeting, we do have a Hmong interpreter available. So if anyone needs a Hmong interpreter, to please sit towards the front on the right-hand side of the audience area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have those services through Zoom too? Yes. We do? Okay. All right, any individuals in the chambers, if you need translation services, please come on the left front side for those translation services.
There is also ASL option on the Zoom portion, so it should be on the screen above you as well, Chair Vang.
All right, thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any changes to the agenda? I see none. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
We have a,
Second.
we have a motion. Let's go ahead and all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next, we have the consent calendar. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Bray, a second by Commissioner Kleiner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Next, we have, do we have any reports by the commissioners? I see none. We'll go ahead and go to continue matters. This is ID 23712, continue from March 15th, 2023. Staff, if we can, we don't need to go through the entire presentation. If we can, just get a summary, please.
Right, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jose Valenzuela. I'm with the Planning and Development Department. Tonight you'll be considering the subject item that was continued from the March 15th public hearing. Just a quick recap. The subject project relates to a development permit that proposes the development of a automated car wash facility on 0.69 acres of property, zone light industrial, on the northeast corner of East McKinley and Fine Avenues. The director previously approved the project on December 8th of last year and was subsequently appealed. It was therefore considered on March 15th for a public hearing. Staff provided a staff report and presentation and recommended denial of the appeal to uphold the director's decision to approve the project. Public comment and the applicant testimony were received. At the hearing, PC voted to continue the item to tonight and recommended the applicant to provide community engagement with the adjacent property owner and the adjacent tenants. The applicant held 2 meetings, one with the property owner and one with the tenants. Summaries of these meetings are provided in your staff report packet. No changes to staff's report or recommendation. Both the applicant and the adjacent property owner and the tenants are in attendance today and are available to speak on those engagements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for staff and the commission?
Yes, I have a question. I noticed in the letter of opposition that the appellant is saying that the applicant is going to use their property. I'm confused by that.
No, they are developing solely within their own property lines.
So this line where it says, offer to remove the vacuum stalls, convert them to handicap, to mitigate their use of our property, they're not using the appellant's they're not using the other person's property.
Correct. They are only developing within their property lines.
Okay.
Any other questions?
If it's okay with the Planning Commission, I'd like to clarify that on the site plan, it does show removal of several parking spaces on the adjacent property. The project was approved with the condition that they either obtain permission from the adjacent property owner, and if they are not able to obtain that, then minor revisions of the site plan would need to be made so that there are no modifications or improvements on the adjacent property.
So would not remove those
Correct.
handicap or move the driveway?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for the staff? All right, let's please have the applicant.
Good evening, chairing members
Good
of the
evening.
commission. Orlando Ramirez with Ramirez Land Planning Incorporated. Also have here Seth Ramirez.
Yeah, Seth Ramirez with Ramirez Land Planning as well. Thank you.
So thank you again for this opportunity to come up here before you and discuss this project. It's been a long and enduring process, but that's what it's all about. So I just want to summarize what some of the history, just expand a little bit on some of the history as directed by the commission. As you are well aware, the commission directed us to have some sort of an outreach with the folks, even though it's not required by the site plan review or development permit process. We took that as an opportunity to reach out to the property owner. So on April 12th, 2023, we met with the complaining party and the appellants and the property owner at the offices of McCormick and Barstow. We met with their attorney and several of their representatives as well as their broker. And we discussed our project and how we could make it work better. Unfortunately, on that day, we weren't able to come up with some sort of an agreement or any concessions that would change the project or any change in uses and stuff. We feel that we felt that we had a really good project, so we wanted to pursue that in that we were looking at a land use issue and not a compatibility issue. Therefore, we felt that the car wash was still a very viable use for that zone district. So we walked away from there without any additional direction. So on April 25th, we had a subsequent meeting with the neighboring tenants and some of the community in that area. We had about 8 to 10 in attendance. that were other tenants in the area, and along with Mrs. Yang and their representative as well. During that time, we had some discussion. There was a lot of confusion as to what the site actually entailed and the orientation of the actual car wash facility. So after our discussion, we tried to make some concessions. We never came into a total agreement as to the uses themselves, but we did agree to go out and walk the actual site. And on doing so, it opened a lot of eyes, not only us, but to the applicant as well, is where they felt like, initially they thought the blowers and everything would be facing towards the actual office uses. We explained to them, we actually walked the physical site and showed where the entry tunnels would be located and where the actual blower tunnels, which are at the intersection of McKinley and Fine, therefore minimizing any of the actual noise impacts. So couple that with our noise study that we provided, we kind of softened the view a little bit. We understand that they still don't agree with the car wash, and that still isn't the primary thing they want to see. But it was a good conversation to have with Mrs. Yang and her correspondence, as well as a legal counsel that they presented. So we are willing to make a few concessions. One of the things that we did discuss is that some of the tenants indicated that could we put a wall, some sort of retaining wall, to mitigate some of the sound to the north, where some of the other offices were. We acquiesced to that. We are willing to do that, put a 3-foot retaining wall with maybe some tubular steel above that and maybe some climbing vines. So aesthetically, it looks a little more pleasing than just a block wall. We're willing to do that, but ultimately the use is permitted by right. We want to maintain that use. We want to be able to get support from the Planning Commission on that use. So we're here to say that we did hear them out, we understand, and we respected it. We respect the uses that are there. But we think we can be a really good neighbor with these folks if we were just allowed to move forward. We appreciate your time, and we've also brought our representative, who's a real estate consultant and land use attorney, that can help us, and would like to, a few moments to speak as well, if that's okay with the commission.
That's fine.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'd like to introduce his name is Brady McGinnis. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brady McGinnis. I'm a real estate, I do consulting and legal work, and I've been brought in just to primarily answer some questions, be there to offer a little narrative, a supporting narrative to the extent we need it, and really just to talk a little bit about the development and the work that's being done at the site, and not to belabor points that have been well already provided to you in the prior hearing, as well as some of the documents, but I just want to reaffirm and make sure that there's a clear understanding that this is a development permit. It's a site plan review. It's not truly an entitlement in the sense that the use that's being brought on this site is a permitted by right use. And quite honestly, in the light industrial use, and this use, at least from my standpoint, is a use that I would see being very compatible in a site near offices on a busy street like McKinley. The reason is there's some pushback of the actual building and the vacuum area in such a way that you can buffer away from the remainder of the development. It's one of those uses that tends to be more active on weekends, which typically works well with a busy office development. So there's attributes of this type of a project that work very well, and we've got to remain cognizant of why this is light industrial. I mean, it's a project that's located by the airport, by railroad tracks, by a very busy McKinley Avenue. It is by nature going to be a louder site just because of those locations. It's light industrial because it does help buffer away from some of the other sites, some of the heavier industrial uses that fall on the south side of McKinley. So it's a project, and it makes sense at a hard corner like this to be able to have a use, yet buffered away from the offices a bit in the sense that the area in which the building and the vacuum area is separated and backed away from the offices. I did want to bring up, I looked at the opposition and the objection that was submitted, and a big part of that was talking about both noise as well as talking about issues and concerns with parking. And I want to be clear, I looked at the recorded instruments that are on the property. These are private agreements, but the agreement related to easements sets forth that the easements are for joint access between the property, which is on the east and the west side, but that the property in question here is a property that's only supposed to be providing reciprocal access, not reciprocal parking, meaning that that property is not intended to be used as part of the parking for the property that's to the that would be to the west of the site, which is the area that is intended to be reciprocal parking. And I was, in reading the actual easement document, it specifically says on parking, and I think it's important that we understand, notwithstanding the above, nothing herein contained shall be construed to require the owner of parcel B, which is the parcel we're dealing with, to provide parking stalls for the use of owners of parcel A. And it goes on and says, in fact, it is anticipated and understood that following the development of parcel B will not support any parking stalls, and it is for this reason that the declaration creates rights in the owner of parcel A, which is the western parcel, to use the available parking existing in and around parcel A. So, and these are obviously recorded instruments that are accepted by a tenant to the extent that they lease the lease area in the office building next door. They are, they are restrictions and covenants that sit on the properties, and both the property owners as well as the tenants are bound by these understandings as well as these restrictions. So I wanted to mention that, and I also obviously wanted to bring up the area of considerations of noise. There has been an acoustical study done. It's found that the acoustical issues here would fall below commercial levels. And again, like I said, it is largely based on use. And with these type of users, you're dealing with people who are generally going to be using for convenience, which is normally weekends, lunchtime, evenings, times that typically work well when they work alongside an office space. And I know that personally because I worked heavily in the entitlements on Herndon and Marks, and that's a business park where there is a mixture of both office and retail, and there's some natural complementary elements with a project like this, similar to what there would be in this project as well. And then the final things I wanted to just bring up, which are things that I know have been stated a number of times. This property is subject to a categorical exemption, which means the state believes that a project that is permitted by right of the size of this property is by nature not going to create environmental impacts. So that is a pretty strong policy finding behind the state underlying a project of this size that's being brought and permitted by right as opposed to a conditional use permit or a rezone or general plan amendment. And when I looked at the documents and I looked at the background, and I've got to be honest, I just brought myself up to speed very recently on this. I note too, the concern is the moment you start potentially restricting or disallowing permitted uses in a zone district that has only recently been updated and approved and studied by the city is the moment you create issues. I mean, we deal with things like spot zoning, where you end up not being able to be permitted to use property for those rights and interests that that property is entitled to by the police power of the city and their implementation of both the development plan the citywide development plan as well as the general plan on the project. So that's really it, and I wanted to just reaffirm some of these elements, and I'm here to answer questions. I will say this, and I mean it, we've got an applicant and a client here who wants to be neighborly, wants to try to do what a good developer should do as part of site planning, which is to deal with things like setbacks, deal with certain types of buffering measures, do things that really make themselves more complementary, more harmonious with the development around it. So by no means by these applications or otherwise is that not something that has been on the table and been in discussions here. The key is, though, let our folks use the property for what it is permitted by right to use. And just plan it in development in a smart fashion, which I know the city of Fresno does in most cases. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You got it.
Can we have the applicant? I have a couple questions. Can we have the applicant approach the podium, please?
Mr. Vang.
How you doing, sir?
Yes.
I want to first thank you for reaching out to the local community and holding these meetings too. I know that last time we had the meeting, there was a lot of tension in the air, but
Yes,
I'm
sir.
glad that you guys were able to go out and do some outreach. I have a question for you. When I read the opposition letter from Mr. Jerry, my apologies if I mispronounce this, Jerry Marisu, he stated that during that conversation on April 12th, I mentioned that there was a possibility of potentially him purchasing the vacant lot, the lot that you guys do have. Was that any consideration, or how was that conversation?
There was a lot of discussion regarding potentially purchasing the property. They couldn't come into an agreement in towards a pricing on that. I think there was a difference between fair market value and the appraised value and what it was purchased for. So they could not come into agreement with that.
Mm-hmm.
That offer was made by our owner, Mo Assad, saying, would you be interested in purchasing our property? So we tried that avenue. We also tried the avenue of purchasing the actual office complex as well, but they could not come to agreement on that either.
What's the, I know that you guys have this agreement with Surf Through Company. And those conversations with the community itself, how, in regards to hearing potential other businesses, are you guys open to that, or are you guys still really set on doing the car wash too?
Right. We had discussed the opportunity to have other businesses locate there. In fact, the property owner, as Mrs. Yang also indicated, maybe we could do some QSRs or some coffee shop type uses. The only issue with that is we have an agreement with Surf Through. Secondly, one of the things that folks need to understand is that a car wash actually gets about one vehicle every 2 minutes on average, if you look at 200 vehicles per day. A drive-through use or a coffee shop is a car every 45 seconds to 1 minute, and that's based on Starbucks statistics. So you're going to double the amount of traffic to that facility if we went with a QSR or a coffee shop type use. So we took that into consideration as well. Now, we don't have any agreements with any coffee shops or any QSR, quick service restaurants. So we, at the point, felt that that's not even a viable option, since that was a concern from Mrs. Yang and Jerry, that we would take that off the table, in that we do not want to detrimentally impact parking and queuing even more so. Additionally, these QSRs and these QSRs and these coffee shops with the drive-up uses have speaker box systems. Those generate actually more noise than an actual car wash would do when you have the ingress tunnel. So that was taken into consideration. Now, my background, I worked 30 years as a deputy city planner for the city of Clovis. So I've seen dozens of car washes. I've seen probably 100 drive-up, drive-through uses. These were all factors that we considered when I was reviewing and overseeing our staff. So we took that into consideration, but we realized that detrimentally, it would be more of an impact with queuing, stacking, noise, and disruption to the neighbors. We want to be good neighbors, and that's why we took that off the table.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission? Go ahead.
Is there a copy of that agreement with Surf Through that we could review?
I'm sorry.
If we have a copy of the agreement, they can review with Surf Through.
We do not have a copy of that agreement.
Is that something that you could provide to the commission?
Mr. Assad, do you have a copy of their surf-through agreement?
Something that has the guidelines of what the requirements are for the build-out.
I can't hear. I apologize.
Is it possible, can we have Mr. Assad approach the podium?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm asking for this PSA with Surf Through. It has the, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mohammed Assad. I'm the owner of the property. And what was the question? If I could, I have a copy, but I don't know if I'm able to maybe I need permission from Surf Through first to disclose it.
Yeah, and I understand if there's an NDA in place or something like that that needs to be done, but I'd be interested in seeing what the requirements of that franchise agreement are in terms of the build-out.
It's not a franchise agreement, it's a sale
It's a sale,
to them, yeah.
okay.
So they're purchasing the land pending entitlement.
Got it. Does it have the details of how the build-out needs to be in order to adhere to that Surf Through experience?
Well, I've sold some property to them before. Usually, I sell it to them with the site plan approved, and then I guess they stick as close to the site plan. They haven't built out one that I've sold yet, so I couldn't say, but I'm sure they have their material and all that in a, how they normally do it. And I could probably find that out for you as well.
That would be helpful to see. You know, there was mention that you've seen dozens of car washes in your time working for the city of Clovis, and I'm a little concerned about the size of the acreage. So we have a 0.69 acre parcel here, and from what I've been reading on, the ideal size is around 1 acre, 0.8 acre to 1 acre. So my concern is that the parcel is not appropriately sized for the use, whether it's a light industrial use or not.
There's mini tunnels, so it's all about the tunnel size as well. Surf-through usually does 130 to 140 foot tunnels. This one's actually going to be smaller than that, so it's going to be one of their smaller sites. But it definitely does fit. You could fit up to, even on a 0.3 acre parcel, a mini tunnel with maybe 12 vacuum stalls or something like that.
So the mini tunnel is that 95 foot or less?
It'd be probably 70 to 95 feet, around there.
Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I think that the site plan that's being presented and being reviewed is something that has been approved by the buyer as well. So it's been site fit in the sense that it meets parking thresholds and the requirements in terms of queuing and that sort of thing as well. So that's part of the reason of going through this process of getting the development permit, is to make sure that we have something that is viable at that size of a parcel as well.
Thank you. Do we have any
And
questions?
if I may add, we have spent probably 6 to 8 months on this site. We have actually redesigned the site to increase the setback requirements along McKinley Avenue. Staff has totally vetted this through all the different divisions within the city and external agencies as well, to make sure that the site meets the minimum size requirements, the parking requirements, the lot coverage requirements. All that has been vetted, and this actual site plan review or development permit, I'm sorry, is actually approved, and all that has been reviewed and conditioned. So there's a whole gamut of conditions that Surf-Through will take on with approval of this that they have to meet in order to process this entitlement. So there's more to it. We're requesting approval of the land use entitlement. After that comes the actual building permit process, construction drawings, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural. All that will have to meet the city of Fresno regulations and development standards. So all that is to say that the development review process is to actually memorialize the actual physical layout of the site and make sure that's approved and meets city requirements, which it has. It's been signed off by the planning staff and by Jennifer Clark as well. So we have met those requirements as far as site design, and we're ready to move forward.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission?
I have one more question. In Mr. Mirasu's letter, he mentions that you offered to remove 2 vacuum stalls and convert them to handicap parking spaces. Is that still on the table?
Yeah, I could speak to that. Along the back side of the property that we're using, we have a number of vacuum stalls in a row there. We actually offered to remove those vacuum stations and flip the parking around so they can be accessed by the office tenants behind, and it would allow them to have, because a lot of them operate on an appointment or a client basis, and that's how they visit. They're not really based on visibility or foot traffic, so it would still allow them to have their client parking, and we would be willing to give that up.
So that's still on the table?
That's still on the table. That was something we left the conversation with.
Excuse me, the only concern was that would require an agreement with the property owner adjacent to that. They might not be open to that, so, but that's something that was offered, but we tried numerous concessions to try to make the site work. They were concerned about not having, as Seth indicated, not having available parking directly in front of the buildings. Even though it's not required, we offered that, but we also understand that there's some easement issues in doing so, and it puts us at a potential liability, so we prefer not to do that. But because of liability issues, but it was something that was offered in the course of conversation.
So it's not
Yeah,
on the
to
table.
explain that a little better right now, when this site is built out, there are not third-party parking easement rights that currently exist. So if we did offer accommodative use of some handicap stalls and we, revise some of the site planning in order to do that, we would have to work with the property owner to grant an easement for that specific purpose. Because again, like I said, the easement on this property right now is cross-access. It is not parking by third parties.
So what you're saying is you would offer that, and it would be up to the property owner whether they accepted it or not.
Correct, and we would have to do a formal easement agreement to make sure that there's clear understanding of rights and liabilities and all those sort of things that go along with it.
Do we have any other questions from the commission? See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we did, at the previous meeting, we did close public comment, but speaking from me, I would like to hear some of the input from the community in regards to how these meetings actually went. If we do allow for public comment, we would have to vote on it. So I'm going to, do I need to make a motion or?
You need to make a motion,
Okay.
and it has to be seconded.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to allow public comment, but to avoid any undue consumption of time or a repetition of points of facts, I'm going to limit each commenter to only 2 minutes. Okay? So my motion's on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let's please take vote.
Commissioner Laude,
I agree. Aye.
Commissioner Diaz,
Hey,
Commissioner Bray,
yes?
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes?
Commissioner Kreiner,
Yes.
Chair Vang.
Yes. Motion passes. All right, so we'll go ahead and open this to public comment. Again, we're only going to have 2 minutes. First off, we'll go ahead and open this to public comment for those who are in support of the project. Please approach the podium, state your name, address, and you have 2 minutes. And this is for in support, please. In support, in support. Do we have any individuals on Zoom who would like to speak in support?
None at this time.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move to public comments. Any individuals who would like to speak in opposition? Approach the podium. Again, state your name, address, and you have 2 minutes. So if you want to speak in opposition, please approach the podium, state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm sorry, my voice is a little bit under the weather. My name is Sammy Lee Yang, and I run Rivendell Community, the adult daycare for clients with disability, mostly autistics. I am going to speak from the human side, which is we're talking about, they keep saying, I keep hearing, it is compatible, it is by right. Okay, I don't speak their language, I speak the human language. And if you're comparing a machine, a big piece of machine to human lives of my individual with disability, that is not compatible, number one. So I do disagree with that. My autistic clients, they have a routine, they function daily on a routine. And if that routine is changed, their whole behavior changes. And the reason why I'm so opposed to this car wash is because it will create a lot of traffic, it will create a lot of noises, not just from the car wash itself, but also from the customers and the cars. And my buses will have a very challenging time just to drop off and pick up my clients. What else? It's not compatible. Just the kind of the parking lot, the handicap parking stall. It's not. It will be moved all the way to between 200 and 300 feet away, where actually it is only 15 feet away from my door. And this is going to be a very challenging. So that's the reason why I'm opposing, and it is not compatible. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next speaker. Please state your name, address, and you have 2 minutes, sir.
My name is Jerry Marisu, co-owner of Airport Village adjacent property, and I live in Sebastopol, California. 2 minutes is really not fair, but I will try to do my best. The development of this project will severely impact our property, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. 45 spaces are taken away, and I realize this is conforming with the general plan and zoning now, but that's only because in 2016, this property was rezoned. We were never notified. The city never came to us and said, we're going to do this, so we had no impact whatsoever as to how the property would be zoned. Second of all, this zone, the first, as one of the employment district, it's one of the purposes is to provide for the appropriate location of businesses that may have the potential to generate off-site impacts while providing to ensure compatibility and use and form with existing and planned using. This car wash certainly does not do that. And the only thing that I want to say is we will not allow any part of our property to be used. That no parking spaces will be taken away, and no fire access will be allowed as proposed in their plan. So the plan as exists now will not be allowed by us, because we will not allow property to be taken away and parking spaces be taken away. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, council members. Christopher Hall, 7647 North Fresno Street, McCormick Barstow. I'm going to go bullet point since we have 2 minutes. I want to be able to hit the top points. There's been a lot of discussion of the Class 32 exemption and use by right, and that there's a categorical exemption. There's been no discussion by staff or the applicant regarding the exception to the exemption, which is found in 15 CCR 15302C, which states that if there's an unusual circumstance that suggests a reasonable probability that activity will have a significant effect, the exemption is unavailable. Doesn't mean you have to do a full-blown EIR, it just means you don't get use of the categorical exemption. That has not been addressed. I think I have demonstrated the unique circumstance. It has not been addressed. The unique circumstance is that there is a current use that is fundamentally incompatible. When we talk about use by rights, absolutely there are uses that are permitted. CEQA still applies, and if the exemption does not apply, you have to go through that process. It has not been done. It should be done. The site plan that's submitted alters my client's property, Jerry. It shows the loss of his parking spaces. It shows that their fire lane is going to go through the front of the building, and it's going to run into my client's parking spaces. The fire department has not seen a site plan that shows that that curve is not going to exist or that my client is not going to lose parking spaces. An accurate site plan must be done to allow the other public agencies to comment on this. We don't have one as of yet. The uses that, alternative uses we discussed, it's very magnanimous that they took them off the table for our own good, but we didn't ask for that. The discussions that were had were that a coffee shop, a sandwich shop would be supported, and we would show our support before they went through the process of applying for those applications, and that those uses would be more compatible. Now, they've talked about traffic and they talked about other things. Nobody has talked about the unique circumstance of a very vulnerable community that already exists in this place and the impact that this specific project will have on that community. And I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals who would like to speak in opposition? If you're in the chambers, please approach the podium, state your name, address. You've had 2 minutes.
Stephanie Lee, 1125 North Coventry, Clovis, California. I am on behalf of Jiami Yang. I'm a friend of her and also a big advocate for the most vulnerable communities, and I spent my entire career evaluated and implemented plans to ensure the safety of this vulnerable population, not only for the individual, but also for the caretaker. And I want to make sure that we are talking a lot about laws and zone and stuff. I have no idea because that's not my job. But my job is the safety and the well-being of the individual. And I want to let you know that this is a community that is underserved, it's not seen out there. And I feel that we as an individual have the responsibility to look after this. And these are my people, these are your people, these are our people. And I hope that we are taking into consideration of the unique needs of this population and really protect them, but also the caretaker of this individual who had the passion to protect them. So I hope that, like Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. And I hope that today, those of you going to make a decision will know better and do better for our community, for our people, for us.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals in the chambers who would like to speak in opposition? Do we have any individuals on Zoom with their hand raised?
We do. 1 second. Linda?
Linda, please state your name, address.
Yes.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Linda Fisher. My daughter attends Rivendell, and I have visited there many times. I have spoken to council members. I've been active in this. I'm active in the special needs community. And looking at the whole situation, I don't know how anybody could vote to carry this forward. As everyone has previously suggested, it is an extremely vulnerable population. These clients, and this is firsthand experience because one of them is my daughter, that if there is too much noise, she is sensory defensive. If there's too much noise, she reacts to that, and then guess who pays for it the rest of the day? I do, as a caregiver. It just is a humanitarian thing that we do not go forward with this car wash. Not only the noise, the pollution, more people. These young people get overstimulated. They're outside, possibly trying to walk and to do some exercise, and the whole situation is not conducive to this population, as has been previously mentioned. I don't know how anyone in good consciousness could move forward with this. It would be devastating, absolutely devastating for this population. And it's about time that we pay attention to the special needs population in Fresno. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals with their hand raised?
Not at this time.
All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Jennifer, do we allow the applicant to address any of these?
Again, that would, we're past the normal items. You can choose as a body to ask the applicant for any kind of rebuttal, but that would be up to you. I would like to ask that before you deliberate, that there are a couple of points that I want to make sure that we put on the record in response to what we've heard tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's go ahead and staff, if we can go ahead and have you bullet point or address those.
So either Phil or Jose, what was the land use prior to the rezoning, and what is it today, and what is the difference between those two land uses, please?
Correct. So the prior land use before the citywide rezone was C6, which, do you remember the technical definition? Heavy commercial. And that allowed for a car wash with a conditional use permit. And The C6 or the heavy commercial yep, that was it.
Yeah, so it's relatively comparable to the current zoning district in terms of the uses that were permitted previously and the uses that are permitted today. And then can you walk through the required findings that need to be made? So if the Planning Commission chooses to make different findings than staff made or chooses to not make a finding, what are those findings on the record that would need to be made? And I've got them here if you want me to do that, but I just wanted to see if you wanted to walk through those.
Okay, yeah, so the required findings are included as Exhibit K of the staff report. I do not have those in front of me right now.
Sure. So finding A, the applicable standards and requirements of the code. So the director or the planning commission may only approve a development permit application if it finds the application is consistent with the purposes of this article and with the following. A, the applicable standards and requirements of this code. So you need to analyze, does the application, does the site plan, the uses therein, do they meet the requirements of the code? The general plan and any operative plan or policies the city has adopted. So does the site plan, the uses, do they comply with the general plan and any operative plan or policies the city has adopted? So if you find a policy that we didn't identify, you can highlight that. Any applicable design guidelines adopted by the city council. Any approved tentative map, conditional use permit, variance, or other planning or zoning approval that the project required. And the Fresno County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, is it in compliance with that? So all of the following would need to be, you would need to essentially make those findings. If you can't make one of those findings, that would be a rationale for denial or for a change in conditions of the approval of the application.
So the major difference between the current zoning and the previous zoning, so current zoning allows it by right, without having to go through a CUP process, and the previous one, you need a CUP? You would have to go through the whole process? Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and just bring this back to the commission. If you have any comments or any motion.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How long is it proposed to take to build out the parcel?
Let's go ahead and have the applicant, if you can approach the podium, please.
Mohammed Assad, I don't know if you're, so I don't have an exact answer for that, but I know that they've had sites where they've had for over 5-6 years with no development yet. They've also, a strategy with car wash companies sometimes is to buy and put their sign up somewhere just to stop anyone else from building in that area. So I can't speak for what their plan is for sure, but I do know they're building out a lot right now, and I can see this being later on in the future for them and not something that they're immediately looking to build out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, do we have any comments, questions, or any motions? I do want to, well, I'll go ahead and start with my comment. You know, it's a very difficult decision. You know, I see it from both sides too, where, you know, I'm all about business too, right? And I see it from the business side of things, and then I see it from the human side of things too. And it's difficult, right? Because I grew up on First and McKinley. So I grew up on First and McKinley, and I've seen businesses come in and out in that area too. So me, as a planning commissioner, it's very essential and very necessary of me to kind of think about the future and, you know, if we do approve this and we do allow for this, what kind of impact that's going to have on our future, right? We won't see it now, but my children, they're going to see it in the future too. So right now, the way I am, I'm very conflicted. I mean, if any other commissioners have anything they would like to say or any comments or any motions.
I agree, it's a challenging decision to make because there is the code and there's the humanity piece. So I don't think that this is a decision that any of us are taking very lightly this evening. If it was an easy one, we would have made it the first go around. I will make a motion. I will make a motion to uphold the municipal code and the findings from the planning department. However, I want the developer and Surf Through to engage the residents of the adjoining facility in the process. So use it as an opportunity to get to know one another, use it as an opportunity to maybe educate and teach them how things work. I think access to, seeing something built from the ground up will be really interesting, and there may be even some excitement. And be a good neighbor, be safe, and talk about concerns that may arise upon opening or during construction early and often, to ensure that both sides can benefit from this.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Let's please take vote.
Commissioner Lade,
In favor.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bray,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreiner,
No.
Chair Vang,
No. We have a 4-2. Motion passes. Thank you, guys. All right, next we have, do we have any reports from the secretary?
I do. Give me just a second. As I promised at our last meeting, I would have the schedule of events for Historic Preservation Month. Historic Preservation Month is the month of May, and the Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, has created a very large number of activities that will be occurring during the month of May. And I think there are a number of them that the Planning Commission might be interested in attending. These include a lot of activities on, in particular, May 20th. So May 20th, which is a Saturday, is an open house day, and there will be a number of properties in Fresno that will be open during the day, most venues from 9 to 2. And these, all of this is notated on the city's website. But these include Fresno County Historical Museum, the Coke-Hallowell River Center, the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, Warner's Theater, including historic cocktails at Frank's Place, the Downtown Club, Pacific Southwest Building, the Helm Building, Arte Americas, Chinatown, the Discovery Center, Soroyan Home Museum, Sun Stereo Warehouse Building, Hotel Virginia, the Armenian Cemetery. So there will be an actual docent tour at 9 and 11. The World War II Japanese Bells and Moon Bridge, the Mercy Boxcar, Flightline Cafe at Chandler Airport, among others. So there's a large number of activities. I'd like to challenge the Planning Commission to take on the Historic Preservation Commission. There will be a pub quiz on Thursday, May 18th at 6:30 p.m. at the South of Shaw Brewing Company. So I'd like to encourage you to go to take on the Historic Preservation Commission with your knowledge of Fresno. And so you can compete as a team or individuals. I think it'll be a really fun night. We'll send you out the full, the full list of activities. But there will be a proclamation of Historic Preservation Month on Thursday, May 11th, and then again, a multitude, 3-page list of activities that they have going on, lectures, quizzes, tours, et cetera. I think it's a really exciting month, and they've worked really hard, and it would be nice to support them. So that's my report for tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, guys, it's currently 6:58. We'll go ahead and enjoy the meeting. Everyone have a wonderful night.
Did we do any unscheduled communication, or at least call for it?
No, I'll go ahead and, do we have any unscheduled oral communications? Any in the chambers? Anyone on Zoom with their hand raised? I
Sorry,
see.
none at this time.
Okay, perfect. We'll go ahead and at 6:59, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.